Hi, I'm attorney Keith Johnson, and welcome back into the Lawyer's Lounge, a place where we have real conversations about a wide range of topics, ranging from law to politics to personal relationships. Today is a very special episode. It's the first time that we've had a guest here on the show. We've even got a new setup. Check it out. If you watch us on YouTube, we're streaming on all major platforms. Please like, subscribe, and share to the podcast. We're going to have a variety of topics and discussions and special guests. Today, I want to talk about adversity. I know it's a word that nobody really likes to talk about, and definitely no one likes to experience. But adversity is part of life. It's part of a good life. It's part of development of character and everything that comes along with it. What do you do when things are not going your way? How do you react to situations that are challenging, even bleak in some circumstances? Do you look for strength within? Do you look at your external circumstances? Or do you look to a higher power? That's the topic of today's show, adversity. And with me, I have someone who's very special to me, someone who is a former client, and he became a brother to me, a friend, someone that I've watched transition from the darkest of situations to now living a beautiful life and inspiring others. So without further ado, I want to introduce my brother, my friend, Shaun Matoya. Shaun, how you doing, man?
I'm fine, brother. How you doing?
Good, good. Thank you for being here on the podcast. It was just an honor to have you here. And I want to kind of tell our listeners a little bit about you. So you are also from North Augusta, South Carolina, which is our hometown. And definitely you have a story to tell. We know a lot of the same people. Yes. And I believe that we kind of met in a very fortuitous situation.
To say the least,
at the Richmond County Jail. So just to give a little bit of a summary, Shaun was arrested at the age of 17 years old, along with some other young men who I knew personally. This was a situation that made its way around our school, our community, because of the young age that Shaun was in when he was arrested. So Shaun, can you just kind of tell the listeners a little bit about your journey and the first time that you realized that you were in a little bit of trouble?
Hot water. Okay, well, like you said, 17, myself and 4 of the friends were arrested. Charged with 24 felonies in total. Indicted, tried, convicted. And at 18, I want to say 18, I was sentenced to 8 life sentences to run concurrent into 2 life sentences that ran consecutive, All
right, so let's stop it right there. So you were originally charged with counts of armed robbery, is that correct?
It's armed robbery, amongst other things, aggravated assaults, Right.
And so how long did you actually wait in jail before going to a jury trial?
Say right at 2 years.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So from the ages of 17 to 19, you're at the Richmond County Jail.
Yes, sir, 6th floor.
Can you tell us kind of what that was like being dragged out of school? Because you were school age, right?
Yep, pretty much.
And now being at the jail with other men who are charged with very serious felonies.
Yeah. It was a rough transition, but I would like to think that I handled it well because, due to my humble beginnings, I was groomed to be tough enough to get by, hold your own, stand your ground. You know how we grew up. So, it wasn't all that foreign to me, but trust and believe, it was an eye-opening experience. Like you say, when you met with, violence is at the ready. Everybody in there has a potential to, like you say, they were much older than me, but
Did you have any bond hearings and try to get released prior to your trial 2 years
Yeah.
later after your arrest?
Yeah, I had several bond hearings, all denied, all denied. Every motion denied. Like it didn't. I started at it was a rough start.
How many attorneys did you actually have during the trial process? From the time of your arrest to time of your jury trial. Do you remember?
I want to say two attorneys, one being appointed by the state, and I will later go on to retain counsel.
Okay. So let's talk about that. That retained counsel, and we're not going to say any names at this point in time, but can you tell us when the first time you actually met with your retained attorney?
Believe it or not, it was the morning of trial.
The morning of your jury trial?
It was the morning of trial.
So let me get this straight. The first time that you met your attorney who was going to be trying your case was the morning that you all were going to start the trial.
That is correct.
And I'm sure that was unnerving. Tell us what that was like.
Well, I had a lot of concerns, obviously. We hadn't made no contact with each other than we discussed payments and methods of payments along those lines, but we had no strategy in place. I don't know what approach he was going to take by way of my defense. I know what I had in mind. I know what, the disposition I took. But it was, like you said, it was unnerving knowing that in my heart of hearts, I just felt like he was ill-prepared.
So did he ask the judge to postpone the case to allow him more time to get acclimated with the facts and the client? Because as our listeners may know, many times trials are fluid. And so you can ask the judge for a brief postponement. And most time the court will grant that request because we want everybody to go in with their eyes open, knowing exactly what the case is about.
If my memory serves me correctly, he did make a request for more time, but by my case being on the court docket for such a long period of time, and I guess the judge was just ready to try the case, and I think, if my memory serves me correctly, I think the judge denied it because like everything, and then every motion that he argued was right there on the spot. It was nothing in writing, nobody had a chance to, like the state had no chance to oppose or read over. So everything he was doing was right there on the fly. So the judge gave me I got the impression that the judge wasn't really feeling his tact. Yeah, he wasn't feeling his tact.
So you didn't go in there with an attorney who you felt had some juice with the court.
I don't think he had the trial experience to try a case of that magnitude, to say, so.
And so this would have been, what, 1999?
This is 99 when I'm going into trial.
Okay. So just to be clear, the attorney was not me.
No, let's be clear.
We were in school, right? We were like 17, 19 years old, right?
Yep.
All right. So you go through the trial. What's it like to sit through a jury trial? Because we have TV shows about it and they make movies about it, but for all our listeners out here, I mean, this is someone who couldn't even drink legally in this country, but was sitting on trial as an adult, facing 8 life sentences. So can you tell us what trial was like? And were you prepared for what the process would be like?
There were a lot of things that I experienced that was the first experience for me. I never knew nervous the way I found nervous in that courtroom. Let me just say that. To have my family sit and go through that, that was a terrible experience. To have victims have to sit back and rehash and recount the trauma that they experienced, all of that was it was saddening. It was revealing, In that instance, I want to say I matured. And within that short space, because my trial maybe last a week, I probably aged 10 years in that week.
Yeah. Were you in a position where you were meeting with your attorney after each day of court to kind of go over things and strategize?
It would always be brief because trial, you got to imagine, you got to think how trial would go late into the evening, 5, 6 in the evening, and then we'd be ushered back to the jail. Most attorneys, that time of day, they don't want to make that trip to the jail. They got families they want to go home to. And by him not being an overzealous attorney, he didn't put that type of effort into it.
Okay.
So like all of our encounters were pretty much occurring throughout trial.
Just like brief encounters, maybe in a side room, maybe in a holding cell, but no chance to have a full conversation where you lay everything out and you're going through exhibits and you're doing all those things.
Not at all.
So tell us about the process of finding out the verdict. Do you remember how long the jury was out deliberating the case? I know it's been a long time ago.
But it didn't take them long, I'm gonna say that. It did not take that jury long to come back with that verdict.
All right.
They hadn't been convinced at all. Not from my side of the spectrum. So it didn't take them long at all. Yeah.
And so tell us, when you heard the verdict, all those guilty counts, I'm presuming that you already knew that this was very serious charges, and even a conviction on one of them could mean the rest of your life in jail. Because in the state of Georgia, armed robbery is a mandatory 10 years up to life in prison if the judge gives you life in prison, which essentially means that the minimum you would get is 10 years, and that's with no early release.
Or for the Senate bill, yeah.
And the maximum you could get would be life in prison.
That's correct.
And so in the state of Georgia, life in prison is at least 30 years before the parole board even opens your file to review you, right?
To consider you at all. You won't get a glance short of 30 years. They won't even look your way.
All right. So tell us what your sentence was and what reaction or thought you had upon hearing it.
Believe it or not, Keith, I knew I would be all right.
Okay.
It was never a doubt in my mind. I say that with all honesty. It was never. I turned around, my mama screaming and crying, my family there in tears, and I'm like, kind of came off as cocky, but it was just a knowing,
Okay.
He said something how he looked down low. I knew the sentence. I felt the sentence was harsh and unjust. Let me say nobody was injured throughout these crimes. There were some violent offenses, but no one was scratched by way of victims, So for a 17-year-old to get that many life sentences, well, I wasn't 17, but for a child, technically still a baby, to get that type of time, I just knew in my heart of hearts, this don't ring true. It didn't sit right in there.
But despite that, you still had these consequences that were before you, even though you maintain your faith. And so can you tell us what that transition was like going from the local jail, because many of our listeners may not know what the process is, but upon a conviction, the Department of Corrections in whichever state you're being held has a transportation team. They come to the local jail, or the local jail takes you to a certain location.
Sometimes, in some cases.
And so, here it's Jackson, which is Jackson Diagnostic Center. And that's a place in the state of Georgia where everyone from around the state is kind of housed after they are convicted, and they stay there for a period of time.
90 days max.
And then they are assigned to a more permanent location.
Correct. Exactly.
So I know it's like a house of horrors, but can you tell us just a little bit about what it was like going down to Jackson, knowing that you had several life sentences?
Well, see, at this time, Jackson, at this point in time, was home to death row when I was convicted. So they didn't send me to Jackson. They sent me to Alto State Prison, which was more designed for the younger offenders, but no less violent. I mean, trust and believe. But same process, like you say, the state Department of Corrections, they send a long, we call it the long chain, man. They send officers at you in the middle of the night. For
In the
security
middle of the
purposes.
night?
Oh, yeah, 2, 3 in the morning.
Wow. That
Yeah.
is like a nightmare.
Yeah, so you getting woke up, long chains, shackles being slapped on you, pack your few belongings, you out of there. It's always a long ride. I never had a pleasant experience about being commuted back and forth. It's always seemed like the longest, most horrible ride. You're in a little small space and then you got people sitting beside you, but not a pleasant experience.
So you're shackled the whole time?
The whole ride.
Yeah.
You shackled till you get to your institution. You got to duck walk, which you're trying to hold on to your belongings, which is wrist bound, and not pleasant.
So once you get there, what happens then?
So you being processed. First thing they're gonna do is shave all your hair off. They're gonna give you a light shower. They're gonna give you a decontamination. Make sure you're not bringing nothing into the facilities.
And so you don't have a choice as to what kind of hairstyle you want.
It's coming off. Everything.
It's coming off. Everything.
Everything. Facial hair, hair on your head, all hair is coming off. Then, like I say, you hit the nail on the head. You ushered to an intake. This is where they go through your belongings, make sure you know contraband. They classify like charges. Certain people can't be in certain environments, like predators, sexual predators. They get put in.
They can't be in general population. They'd be a target.
Exactly.
Okay.
They get put into an isolated dormitory. So where mainly is more of those type of offenders, elderly people. But then you have the youthful offenders, who are all over the place.
Yeah.
You can't avoid it.
Yeah. How many facilities did you go to during your time in custody?
Every last one of them.
All right.
Every level 5 prison.
Every level 5. Rough estimate, how many are there in the state of Georgia? Because I know it's at least 5.
Way more. I can count 10 off the bat.
All right. And so for our listeners, a level 5 prison is a place where the most dangerous offenders are housed based on their convictions and the type of conviction. So we're talking murder, we're talking armed robbery, we're talking rape, we're talking anything violent. And so you have almost a melting pot of people who are convicted.
A hornet's nest.
And presumably not everyone is necessarily guilty, but they've been convicted.
Yeah.
All right. And so you described it as a hornet's nest. So let's give our readers, our listeners, just a 30-second overview of kind of what it's like when you first get into a place like that. Do you have to try to make friends? Do you have to stay to yourself? Do you not do a lot of talking? Like what are the politics back there?
Well, fortunately for me, I had spent a lengthy period of time in the county. And some of the guys that I had built bonds with or knew from the streets, they was already in the prison. So I was kind of given a warm welcome in that sense. Excuse me. And I would say if you have a reputation, you'll be all right. If you have respect, if you got self-respect, you'll be all right. Because a man has to be a man, and a man gonna notice if you're a man, and they gonna see. But
if you are weak, basically,
you're in trouble.
They prey on the weak.
You're in trouble.
So at this point in time, are you still in contact with your family? Are they still trying to keep you encouraged and you're going through the appeals process? Or did those relationships kind of fall off because you're kind of a dead man walking?
Out of sight, out of mind. They start to wither away.
Yeah.
Yep. Out of sight, out of mind. Thank God for Mom. I had a few lawyer friends who, no matter what set of circumstances I found myself in, I could always call on, Goo. So in that, I was blessed in that regard.
Yeah.
But I started losing family members. I started losing friends, and some of them being my support group and stuff like that. It hit hard,
Yeah. So you're going through the appeals process. And what was your feeling when your first appeal was denied? You know, meaning
Very
essentially
Yeah.
you were trying to get a new trial and the appeals court said, nah, you're going to serve these multiple life sentences. Tell us how you kind of dealt with that type of adversity and bad news as a young man.
Well, I knew I couldn't take it laying down. And, you know, I'm young. I'm not well read in law, you know. So I'm at the bottom of Mount Everest, you know. I'm just looking at it like, but I know I got to climb. I got a fight ahead of me. So, you know, now I'm in the law library, you know, because I come from humble beginnings. We didn't have a lot of money laying around. I was fortunate to retain the terrible lawyer that I retained, you know, and I was able to do that through friends, you know, rounding up money here and there. So money wasn't readily available, but I didn't have a bunch of resources to go get the best attorneys and stuff like that. I'm up against the state now. So I'm doing what I can by way of getting familiar with the law, trying to stay positive, but mind you, I'm in an environment where it's hard to be positive. It's hard to stay focused when so much chaos is always going on around you, you know. So many people that gave up, they looking at me like, man, you going to that law library, you wasting your time.
Tell us about that. I mean, because I could imagine the level of negativity. I mean, I see it on the front end at the local jail, but even in the prison, this is already after the conviction and the appeals have been exhausted. What would you like our listeners to understand just about that bleak situation and how you maintain any level of hope? Maybe you can inspire somebody through what worked for you.
Well, I kept God first. I never doubted him, not once. I never doubted God or his ability. I knew he knew my heart, so I found a lot of comfort in that. What motivated me was to want to get back to my family. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't sit in there and lose all my family. I was losing some, but I couldn't sit back and lose them all. So that kept a fire up under me. That lit a fire up under me that I would say compelled me. In the words, like I said, I was in isolation. Some camps, I was locked down 23-1 for 3 years.
What does 23-1 mean?
23 hours inside the cell, 1 hour outside the cell. That hour outside the cell is going to be divided up into you washing and whatever recreation that, you know, that they offered, maybe walking around in a cage outside for 30 minutes.
And how long were you in that kind of isolation?
Pretty much. Well, I did a lot of time in special management units.
Okay.
Violent, for like the problem makers. So I remember once I did like 3 years at Hayes State Prison. I was in 23-1 that whole 3 years.
So for 3 years, you were in a cell for 23 hours a day and having one hour to hygiene, to try to get some fresh air and all those things. Wow.
For 3 years.
Wow.
I think that was the longest stint.
Yeah. All right. So let's kind of talk about the road that led to your release. So at some point in time, we're able to get you back into court.
Thank God.
And your case is overturned because of what the court deems to be ineffective assistance of counsel, not one time, but 2 times. And let me just try to break it down for our listeners. So Shaun had exhausted all of his appeals, meaning that he had an appeal that was to the Georgia Court of Appeals that was denied. And then he had an appeal called a habeas corpus. And a habeas corpus is almost a last-ditch shot. If you're into sports, think a Hail Mary at the end of the game from the 50-yard line. And the quarterback goes and he throws it up and he's just hoping for a prayer. That's essentially what
almost never happens. Yeah.
Habeas corpus was. And so what the court found, thank God, is that Shaun's trial lawyer was what they deemed to be ineffective or not competent in how he managed the case and how the case was tried, which is very rare for a case to be overturned on that. But not just his trial attorney, it was also found that his appellate attorney did not present the case in a competent way, not just an effective way, but a competent way. So it's a very low standard. And so Shaun, unfortunately, was represented by two attorneys who the court deemed to have not risen to the standard of competency. And so that afforded you a new trial. Yep. So it wasn't that the convictions or the case went away, is that we started back at square one like it was 1998. So tell our listeners how long you actually did in prison before your case was overturned and returned back to the trial court.
Before it was overturned, I had spent roughly, at that point, like going on 17 years in prison. 17
years in prison. So at that time, you're in your late 30s.
Yes, sir. Mid-30s or late 30s, yeah.
Mid to late 30s, you went in, you were arrested 17 years old.
Came home at 36.
And came home at 36. And so everything was different.
Yes, the 30s.
So let's go back to when you read the opinion. Do you remember where you were? I want to walk through this part. Do you remember where you were when you read that piece of paper that essentially gave your life back?
Well, let me tell you a funny story, Keith. Okay, so when the motion was submitted, when the habeas was submitted, I got a copy of the habeas.
Yeah.
And, you know, the habeas get written up in a way, it's like compelling the judge to find it this way. So as I'm reading this, I'm thinking this is the judge's ruling. But it's not.
It's just the motion.
It's the motion
that we have
requested. Yeah. So I'm thinking my case is already overturned, but the judge hadn't even made a ruling.
Yeah.
I'm calling people. My case overturned. I'm on the way home. Now, mind you, I'm reading the motion. This is not the judge's ruling.
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't well versed in the law. I never claimed to be a lawyer. So yeah, but then I get the actual opinion. And the judge, he found in my favor. And man, I was in a special management unit. And when I tell you, that was like the absolute, it's like the heavens opened up and the sun just poured right on me.
Did you have to read it a couple times?
Keith, I can tell you word for word
you
right
memorized
now.
it?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was so excited. So this was the actual one. This was the real McCoy. But I think I would like to tell myself I spoke that thing into existence.
Okay.
I would like to tell myself that.
So did you place a phone call to mom?
Immediately.
And it was just almost in disbelief.
And I knew at that point, but like you say, it was always a chance, because like you said, the case is not gone. It's just overturned, and it's a chance they could retry, and I'd be right back in prison if convicted. So like I said, I was still I was scared for that fight. I was worried about that, but I knew the hard part was out the way.
You got a chance.
Yeah, I got to fight the chance again.
And so you were transported back to the Richmond County Jail, and then we come up with a plan to try to get you out of there.
Yes.
Because the argument that I had for the judge was, this man has done almost 20 years in jail. The court has overturned the conviction and has said that both of his attorneys that he had previously were not competent. So there's no reason for him to be lingering in our jail while this case is now pending. And so we really didn't know for sure what the judge was going to do. Kind of tell us your impressions of what I was trying to tell you, and whether you believe that you were actually about to get out.
Yes. I mean, you word for word, you walked me down. I mean, I want to tell them how you just came and got me out of that cell. Like, and when I say you, that was another blessing. Like, for you to just come find me in that jail and, hey, bring Shaun Montoya to me, for you to be in that position from where we come from, for you to be the one to come do that for me and say to me, like, thank you so much for that. I want to tell you that. Bottom of my heart, thank you for that.
Blessings, man.
And you just like, you set it all up. I mean, because the state was being a little resistant with me initially. They was playing tough. They didn't want to give me the bond. I think the first bond they gave me was like $250,000, and they ended up taking it back the same day. I mean, so I was going through well, you was there with me. You know what I was going through. But once you latched on, I was just like,
yeah,
it's done. It was just a matter of time, man. But that seemed like the longest time out of all of the time.
Sure.
But you hear me?
So
that seemed like the longest time.
I remember being in court and the judge granting that bond and talking with your mom about the process of trying to get you out and get you home. Tell us the first thing that you did when you were released from jail, because it had been the first time. This was what, 2018, 17 or 18, and you had been in custody for about 19 years at that point.
At that point.
So when you get out, what happened?
Well, like I said, I was always blessed with a great support group. So first day, Goo came and got me, bought me phones, clothes, shoes, stuff like that. I think I had to hurry up and get home because I think it was did I have a leg monitor? Yeah, I had a leg monitor, so I wasn't able to do too much. I had a curfew already. So next morning I was going to work.
That's right.
The next morning
That's right. That's right.
I went to work the very next morning.
You went to work, and I can attest to it every time I go into my basement. You and Goo or Ned and the team really did a lot of home improvement projects to include
your man cave, your
movie
theater.
Yeah. So at this point in time, you have a new lease on life. You're working, but the case is still not over. Tell us how it felt when we found out that essentially the case had been dismissed and you were walking away without a felony conviction.
All my rights restored. You did that. Along that time, like I said, I was out, kept my nose clean. You was adamant about that. I'm adhered to the curfew. But like I said, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, will these people try to put me back in prison? I'm home now. I'm out on bond. You know, I could taste it. I could taste the fresh air, but in the back of my mind, I know for a fact they could all be taken away.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so once that case was dismissed, did you have the thought about those guys who were still back locked down that you had spent almost 20 years?
I think about them every day.
Yeah.
Some good people in there, man, that made bad choices.
Tell listeners more about that, because I feel like people who are not involved in the criminal justice system from our side have a view of people who are convicted that they're monsters or that they're less than human. And, there are some very dangerous and some bad people, but there are people, like you said, who have humanity, who love God, who are good people.
I mean, loyal. I have met people behind that wall in prison who I bet on every time. I mean, genuine, smart. I mean, and it's funny. Like I came into my own in prison. I can say that. I don't say it with pride, but everything became clear to me in prison. Like, what with the direction, like my moral, my character, how to work a room, how to read. I mean, like everything became crystal clear to me now.
Yeah. So that's kind of where you grew up, in a sense. So you and I have had a relationship since the case was over with, and we know a lot of the same people. Kind of as we wrap things up, how have you been able to transition back into society in a way where you're healthy and you're positive and you don't have any bitterness? Because there was a big chunk of your life that you can't get back, a big chunk that is gone. How do you not dwell on that and focus on what's ahead and be present through the adversity that you endure, Shaun?
Well, When life give you lemons, you make lemonade. You do what you can. But, okay, I'm trying to just hold to the whole question. You gotta dig deep, man. Sometimes you have to dig deep. Like, if you want something, it's not always gonna be handed to you. But let me say, in my case, and I say this, and people look at me crazy, but I don't think I would change nothing.
You wouldn't change anything. Wow.
It made me the man that I am. I'm proud of who I am today. I got a right to be, so.
Yeah.
As fun as that sound, man, because like I said, I came into my own in there. I found clarity in there. And I don't know, had I been out, how life would have turned out for me. I might not have got a chance to mature. I might not have got acquainted with empathy and compassion and respect for others, all of that I attained in prison. So,
yeah. So what you're saying is that adversity that you faced actually molded you, and it was adversity that helped with the evolution of you as a man.
No doubt.
And that you wouldn't change a thing.
No doubt.
Wow. So, lastly, what would you tell young people that hear your story that may not necessarily be on the right path, and may see glamour in certain lifestyles? What's the inspiration or encouragement that you would like to leave them with?
There is no amount of money that you would not give for your freedom. Value your freedom. Value the time that you get to spend with your loved ones, because that is no place for no civilized, rational human being. It is a place for correction. To those going through that, remember, it is a place for correction. Utilize it. Take accountability. Get acquainted. Look at the man in the mirror. And be honest with yourself. And if you're given an opportunity to stay free, stay free. But if you're ever in prison and you're given an opportunity to come home, cherish it. I'm sure you will. If you've been in prison and you get an opportunity to come home, I'm sure you're going to cherish that opportunity.
And lastly, what about those people who it looks bleak? There are no pending appeals. There is nothing that is there to hold on to, or just in life in general. Somebody that's going through something that's on the level of what you went through. Can you briefly just give them something to hold on to today?
Head to the sky. He sits up high, he look down low. But that heart got to be clean. Like I said, that's when I got acquainted. Like, everything became, God was going to touch my life. The life that I was living, I had to grow up. I had to stop I had to stop abusing people. I had to keep my hands out to myself. Like, I had to grow up. And the moment I did, I got acquainted with humility, and God he started pouring into my life, Keith. He just started pouring into my life. He always kept me with the right people, the right connections the entire time. 19 years is a long time. It's easy to forget about somebody in 19 years. But God always kept me with the right acquaintances. He always put the right people in my life. And I always attribute everything good that happened to me to God. I take no credit.
Well, Shaun, it's been an honor to be a part of your story. Yes. And it's been an honor for you to come on the Lawyers Lounge podcast to share your story with other people. I've seen firsthand the evolution, the text message that you send me, keeping me encouraged, asking me, am I getting enough rest? Not just contacting me if you need something. And that's a true friend, and that's just a special person. So I believe God allowed you to go through this for platforms such as this, to where you can share your story with other people. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me, brother.
And so I want to leave our listeners with this. I started the show by talking about adversity And how do you handle adversity? We all have adversity in our lives. Remember, adversity comes from the same place that the blessings come from. It's the yin and the yang of life. Nobody gets through life without any scars. Nobody gets through this journey without any setbacks. But just like Shaun, you have to see it for what it is. It's a part of the story. And it's about how you respond to that adversity, how you maintain your faith and your hope in a higher power when things seem bleak. We had a young man who had multiple life sentences he was facing before the age of 20 years old. And he said he would not change a thing. That's powerful. That's a blessing to hear. And it should be informative as we all move forward in our life. So don't forget, the past is behind you. It only brings up guilt. The future is full of anxiety. Only God knows the future. The present is our gift. That's where the fun is. That's where the action lies. Stay in the present. Do what you can, when you can, and do something for someone else. Until next time, God bless.